Welcome to the Sports Angle, live in Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world. I'm your host, Rachiele. Let's get into it. Go to our website, thesportsangle.com. Check out all the content we have on there. Articles, audio, video, live streams. We have it on thesportsangle.com. Wrote an article recently about the Vegas Golden Knights. They had a devastating loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins in their most recent matchup, but they are going to go up against the Toronto Maple Leafs in an upcoming matchup. But check out the article we wrote about them on thesportsangle.com. As well, we upload all of our recent shows to our website. So if you do not have Facebook Live, if you do not have YouTube, if you cannot watch us on any of those social media sites, we got you. Go to our website, go to our video portion, and you'll be able to watch all our shows there. As well, for all audio listeners on iHeartRadio and Spotify, we have over 650 episodes all uploaded, all ready to go. So if you want to listen to the shows on the Sports Angle, go to Spotify, go to iHeartRadio, go to Spreaker, go to all platforms we share this show to. Hit the follow button and turn on notifications so you not miss any episode of the Sports Angle. As well, go to all our social medias at the Sports Angle, follow, like, and share all the shows to all your friends and family around the world. We appreciate your support as well. Follow your host on social media at Rachiele. The NFL wildcard round, it is over and done with, and later in the show, we will cover and we will talk about those matchups in detail. But to start out this show, to start out the Sports Angle, we're going to get into the divisional odds. We're going to break down and really get into these four matchups that we're about to see this weekend. So in order to do so, I had to bring on a guest. I had to bring on someone who's really going to know his stuff. And that is Vegas Mike, longtime listener, longtime supporter of the Sports Angle. Vegas Mike, it's been a while since I've had you on. How's it going?
Rocco, everything's good.
And I want to ask you, because I believe you are a fan of the Raiders, if I'm not mistaken. I think you are a fan of one of those teams.
Always like the Raiders and the Bears.
All right. So let me ask you this question. Before we get into the divisional round, before we break down the odds, I want to ask you, when it comes to the Las Vegas Raiders, when it comes to that organization, I really want to know, Mike Mayock, gone. John Gruden, resigned. They have been interviewing head coaches. They're interviewing general managers. But the quarterback position is still a question mark. Understand that Derek Carr is from that era. Derek Carr has been with the Raiders for 8 years now. Is it time for them to move on? Is it time for them to move on and bury the past and start from new? Is it time for the Raiders to build for the future by getting rid of the past, by getting rid of the Gruden, Mayock, and Carr era? And before anybody in the chat says, oh, what's my opinion on this? Well, you already dang know my opinion on this. 2 months ago, here on the Sports Angle, I said, and I will document it once again, that the head coach, the manager, and the quarterback, I said, was all going to be gone by the end of the year. That's my opinion. But Vegas Mike, I want to know from you, do you think they're going to complete the set and they're going to get rid of Derek Carr in 2022, or are they going to keep him as the only pillar left from that era in Las Vegas?
Rocco, I'm glad you had me on here to talk about sports. Nowadays, in the modern era, sports is money. Sports is about money. Sports isn't about sports. It's about playing for money, whether you are a player, an owner, or just a fan. You are playing for money nowadays. Whether people want to admit it or not, it's about the money, so follow the money. Now let's start with the Raiders, because you asked a superb question there, Rocco. Davis wanted to make a splash when he came here. He had a gazillion-dollar stadium built for him, or 1.9 billion, but we'll call it a gazillion for round numbers. And he wanted to make a splash. Has he made a splash yet? Nope. Has it been kind of a thud? Yes. So I think he wants to make a splash. So I think whether it's quarterback, general manager, or coach, He's out there to make a splash. So Carr is a nice quarterback, methodical quarterback, reasonable quarterback, but he's gone. The splash has not been made. So this is Davis's chance to make a splash, however he does it. And whether it's in the coaching, the general manager, or the quarterback, he's going to try to do it in all three. My opinion, nothing behind it except it's for the splash, which means it's for the money.
And we're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders here on the Sports Angle. I'm your host, Rachiele. We're here with Vegas Mike. And, when you're talking about splashes, unless you talk about the whole Antonio Brown fiasco that happened when John Gruden and Mike Mayock were just getting started, maybe that's the splash you were talking about with Mark Davis. But in terms of actuality, there is the big three in terms of quarterbacks this offseason. There is the big fish in the pond, and that is Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Deshaun Watson. Now, I have made it very crystal clear that if Aaron Rodgers goes anywhere, he wants to go back to the West Coast. He wants to move closer to home. But unfortunately, a lot of those teams already have secure quarterbacks. So unless one of those teams is willing to move on from one of their quarterbacks right now, I don't see it happening. For Russell Wilson, I've been saying for a while that I think the Pittsburgh Steelers would be a perfect option for Russell Wilson. I think him moving into the AFC North would be a brilliant idea for him. And then Deshaun Watson, I said the New York Giants just makes way too much sense at this point for them to move on from Daniel Jones and bring in a star-studded talent like Deshaun Watson. But let's talk about this point before we move on to the next segment. We talk about the NFL divisional round odds here with Vegas Mike. I want to know from you, if you are the Raiders, if you need a big splash, do you at least make the attempt to go get Aaron Rodgers and see if he would leave Green Bay? Do you make the attempt to go out and get the 8-time Pro Bowler in Russell Wilson? Or despite all the legal problems and all the bull crap that Deshaun Watson's had to go through in Houston, do you make a trade, and do you trade multiple first-round picks to bring in a young, talented quarterback in Deshaun Watson?
Rocco, one of your guests on this show and who follows you a lot, Vegas Karen, believes it's Russell Wilson. And the reason Vegas Karen believes it's Russell Wilson is because his wife performs here at one of the shows. Now, is that a reason for Russell Wilson to come here? Is it a reason for him to avoid the cold of Pittsburgh? Is it a reason for him to avoid whatever he wants to avoid? I don't know. I've been watching him lately, and he looks a little bit overweight. So will he make a splash in the game, or will he make a splash by jumping into the pools here at the many casinos? I don't know. He's a little overweight. Aaron Rodgers would be the biggest splash. Let's face it. Come on. The biggest splash would be Aaron Rodgers, and particularly since Carr talked about on a post-game show recently, that him and Aaron Rodgers message back and forth all the time. That would be kind of ironic if Aaron Rodgers replaced him. So the big splash would be Aaron Rodgers. Will it be him? Who knows? But it's going to be a splash.
Well, we're talking about Russell Wilson. Let's go to the chat real quick. Blaze, my good friend, I always see you in the chat. It's good to have you here on the Sports Angle. He says, first off, go Bengals, because obviously the Bengals beat the Raiders. And he says Russell Wilson can't handle the AFC North. And my rebuttal is, you know what? When it comes to Russell Wilson, to me, it just makes too much sense in terms of puzzle pieces for him to go to Pittsburgh. Ben Roethlisberger's on the way out. They need to get a quarterback. They don't believe in Dwayne Haskins. They don't believe in Mason Rudolph. There's a lot of mystery out there in Pittsburgh. And unless they're going to draft a quarterback in the first round, which they have done in the past, I believe the Pittsburgh Steelers would try to bring in a big name quarterback to replace Ben Roethlisberger. Because let's face it, when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, really over the last 20 years, they're not really content on just having a no-name quarterback as their starting quarterback out there in Pittsburgh. Now Vegas Karen, who you mentioned before, she's in the chat as well. Russell Wilson will come to the Raiders because his family will be here, kind of piggybacking off of what you said earlier. Now, that was the first segment here on the Sports Angle, really talking about the Raiders and how personally I think them trying to get a Doug Peterson, them trying to get Dabo Swinney. Honestly, I think Dabo Swinney is a pipe dream but I understand the reason why they'd want to do it. I think Doug Peterson would be a more perfect option myself, but we'll see what happens with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, it's time to get into the NFL divisional odds here on the Sports Angle. And since Blaze brought it up, his Cincinnati Bengals, I'm going to start with them. They're the first game of the matchup. Yeah, the Cincinnati Bengals, Tennessee Titans. That'll be played on Saturday when I'm working. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to watch this thing just like I did last week. I was at work when the Bengals beat the Las Vegas Raiders. So I want to ask you, Vegas Mike, and I want to ask everyone around the world when it comes to this game. The odds makers right now, and I'm looking at the Caesars one here because I base it off of what's going on at Caesars. I go over there. I trust their knowledge. The Tennessee Titans right now, as we speak, are minus 185 in terms of the money line. They are 3.5-point favorite as the spread as we speak. And the over and under is, interesting enough, 47. So when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals and Tennessee Titans, they have the Titans as a 3.5-point favorite. And the interesting part about this matchup is that a lot of experts, so-called experts, are saying that the Tennessee Titans are going to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. There's a lot of people who are saying that it's not going to be close once they bring back Derrick Henry. Once they bring back one of the best running backs in the NFL, it's not going to be a close battle between the two. I disagree, but Vegas Mike, I want to know from you as you're here on the show. So Cincinnati Bengals, Tennessee Titans, 3.5-point favorite as we speak. Do you think that this is accurate for starters? And secondly, if you are a betting person, you see that 3.5. Does that concern you? Does that shock you at all?
Rocco, let's go through the steps here. I watched the Bengals and the Raiders, and the Bengals had a great starting game plan, and they went ahead, but they went cold turkey in the second half. Now, considering they went cold turkey and consider that the Titans usually warm up in the second half, particularly in the running game, the Bengals better have more than a 20-point lead against the Titans in the first half, because if they don't, they're going to go cold again, and the Titans are going to play their best game in the second half. If you look at the odds, the odds have Titans of 850 plus 850 to plus 900 against the Bengals plus 1200 to plus 1500. So trying to ration that down to the point spread and the money line, I would say it doesn't matter whether you look at the odds or the money line or the spread. The Bengals, based on the money, are not going to do this. And they're probably going to go cold in the second half unless they change their game plan, and the Titans are going to excel in the second half. So right now I would go with the money line and the odds and the spread and say the Bengals are probably not going to cover the spread.
I mean, covering the spread, I understand that. And when it comes to 3.5, when it comes to Tennessee Titans, I mean, this could be a very close game. This could be a good back and forth matchup. But as Blaze, a Cincinnati Bengals fan in the chat, he said this: we are beating Tennessee. Reminder, we dominated the Titans last year with no Joe Mixon, no defensive tackles, no defensive backs, and they didn't have Jamar Chase yet. And I'm actually going to say this because people love to use past analytics and they love to use the past as a way to validate their argument. Well, there's a lot of people who would bring up the fact that the Tennessee Titans lead the all-time series between the Cincinnati Bengals. The Tennessee Titans have the advantage in terms of all-time against Cincinnati. But my rebuttal and my argument for why Cincinnati is going to win this game, regardless of the spread, regardless of 3.5, regardless of the money line, here's why I think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to win this game. Because they have one variable they didn't have last year. They have one variable that hasn't been there in that entire all-time series against the Tennessee Titans. Cincinnati Bengals have one thing that has led to their second half momentum in 2021. And more importantly, they have one thing that beat the Las Vegas Raiders, and that is Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. They have a quarterback wide receiver chemistry that is out of this world. They have a quarterback wide receiver duo that they know where the ball is going to be. When Burrow sees Jamar Chase, he just goes screw it. Jamar Chase is down there somewhere. I'm just going to put it up in the air and trust him. He's going to go get it. And that is a second-year quarterback and a rookie wide receiver. I mean, understand this, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't a 8-year quarterback and a 9-year wide receiver. This isn't been a quarterback and wide receiver that have been in the NFL. This isn't Brady and Moss when they were almost a decade into their careers when they teamed up in 2007. This wasn't Reggie White and Peyton Manning in the late 2000s when they were already into their careers. No, this isn't Peyton Manning and Wes Welker when they were out there in Denver. No, what this is a rookie wide receiver and a second-year quarterback having amazing chemistry and the fact that these two could trust each other at that level. That is the variable that leads me to believe that Cincinnati is going to be too much for the Titans defense. So yeah, when it comes to the money line, when it comes to the spread, Tennessee being -3.5, I'm taking the Bengals +3.5 all day, every day, because they have one variable that has been changed from their latest outcomes and their latest game performances against the Titans in the past, and that is the chemistry between Burrow and Chase. Vegas Mike, I think you have something to say about that.
Let me mention to you, Rocco, and Chase, and anybody else who's on. In the playoffs, the defense is very important. And you both know that the Raiders had a very weak defense. The defense played beyond itself in that game. They did great, but they played beyond themselves. So I would tell you that the Raiders lost it. The Bengals did not win it. The Raiders lost it in that last play of the game. So I'm going to remind you, the defense for the Titans is better than the defense for the Raiders. And the Raiders were within 1 yard of tying that up if Carr had done the correct throw. He didn't. I probably wouldn't. You probably would not. But maybe somebody else would have. So it'll come to the defense, and the Titans got the better defense. They're going to cover the spread, and they're going to beat the Bengals.
See, Vegas Mike, this is where we're going to disagree. Because understand that the Titans have a better defense than the Raiders. But you want to know who has a better defense than the Raiders and the Titans? You want to know who has a better defense and has one of the best lines? And that's Cincinnati Bengals. I understand Cincinnati Bengals with guys like DJ Redder. A Cincinnati Bengals team with someone like Jesse Bates, who's one of the most disrespected safeties in the game today. Understand, this is a Cincinnati Bengals team that has a lot of talent and a lot of depth on that defensive side of the ball. And in terms of analytics, and people love to bring up their glorious analytics, the Cincinnati Bengals defense, in terms of Pro Football Focus, in terms of Pro Football Reference, they are better than the Tennessee Titans. They are better than what the Tennessee Titans have on defense. Because I understand Tennessee Titans have had injuries this year, and they've also lost a lot of their players this offseason because they had to get rid of them in order to cut back on costs. So when it comes to Tennessee Titans, when it comes to Cincinnati Bengals, if you're someone who says defense wins championships, then great, keep to your argument and say that Cincinnati Bengals have a better defense than the Tennessee Titans do. Because understand that the Cincinnati Bengals, that defense, I trust them to stop Derrick Henry. I trust them to get into the face of Ryan Tannehill versus the Titans defense, who has to double coverage Jamar Chase, and that leaves T. Higgins, that leaves Tyler Boyd wide open for them to get their touches as well. That's something a lot of people forget about.
Well, Rocco, you and your listeners may be the only ones that believe that, because going to Fox Bet, they've got the Tennessee Titans at only a 2,300 point deficit to the Green Bay Packers in the odds, where they've got the Cincinnati Bengals a 3,700 point deficit to Green Bay if they were to get into the Super Bowl. So I have not seen a place where the money flows. Listen to what we're talking about, where the money flows, that thinks that Cincinnati is going to be there. So if you believe in following the money and you believe that sports has now become about the money, then you've got to see it to the Tennessee Titans.
You know, this whole money thing, I understand we're in the sportsbook capital of the world. We're here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I understand that. But let me tell you something else that also a lot of people love. They love betting on the underdog. They love rooting for the person that's at the bottom. And right now, the Cincinnati Bengals are plus 1,200. They are the bottom of the list right now. Understand the Cincinnati Bengals, who I also have in a Super Bowl. Anybody who saw our bracket on the Sports Angle knows I had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beating the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl 56 at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. And when I did that show, a lot of people were upset. A lot of people were mad at me for saying the Cincinnati Bengals, they're the biggest underdog. They're the lowest out of all of the teams in the odds. Why are you picking the Cincinnati Bengals, Rocco? The reason why I picked Cincinnati was because of that offense, because of their momentum, and the fact that this Cincinnati Bengals team has nothing to lose. And understand that when there's a team that has absolutely nothing to lose, they will do anything and everything to win that game. Go back and look at the Baltimore Ravens around 2012 when they were a wild card team, when they were fighting for their lives. They had nothing to lose, so they did trick plays. They had a great defense. They built up momentum in that second half of the 2012 season, and they ended up going all the way. So when people tell me that, oh, why are you picking this team when they're that far down? It's because they're an underdog, and that underdog mentality means that they're going to go balls to the walls. They're going to go 200 miles an hour down the straightaway. They have nothing to lose, and that is why they're going to go and beat not only Tennessee Titans, but also in my bracket, I have them beating the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. So before we move on to the next AFC game, Vegas Mike, final comments about this Titans versus Bengals game.
My final comment, Rocco, is you're not following the money. You made a comment that people like to bet for the underdog. And the reason that Cincinnati is so close is because people are betting for the underdog. If they weren't betting for the underdog, the point spread would be even further. So that's my final comment. Now, which one did you want to go to next, Rocco?
We are going to stay in the AFC side of the bracket. We're going to do our NFL divisional odds, talking about it here on the Sports Angle with your host, Rocco Rachiele. We're here with Vegas Mike as our guest. And we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills, Bills Mafia, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, Chiefs Kingdom out there in Missouri. So when it comes to the Chiefs and when it comes to the Bills, once again, the odds brought to you by Caesars. When it comes to this game, Kansas City is the favorite at minus 135, according to the money line. They are a 2-point favorite in this game, and the over and under is 54 and a half. Now, this Buffalo Bills game, Kansas City Chiefs game, is a lot more even than a lot of people expect, and understanding what happened earlier this season when the Buffalo Bills beat the Kansas City Chiefs. But let's just be real, Vegas Mike. Those two teams are way different than when they met earlier in the year. The Buffalo Bills were riding the highest of the highs. Kansas City looked like they were falling off a cliff performance-wise, and it is now flipped. The Kansas City Chiefs have been one of the hottest teams in all of the NFL after that loss to the Buffalo Bills, and the Buffalo Bills started to stutter just a little bit before they got their act together towards the last 4 or 5 weeks of the NFL season. So Vegas Mike, I want to ask you, the Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills, the Chiefs are a 2-point favorite in this matchup. But I want to know from you, from an odds perspective, A, have they gotten that right? Is it really going to be that close of a game where it is only a 2-point spread? But more importantly, when it comes to this matchup, you got two of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL, in Josh Allen, in Patrick Mahomes. So is this matchup, I mean, what intrigues you about this matchup? What makes this matchup interesting to you, Vegas Mike?
Rocco, let me ask you a question. Who's got the better defense? The defense is going to win this game.
If you're going to ask me over the entire season.
No, now, who? At this time, the momentum of the season, who today has the better defense? In your view, Kansas City or Buffalo? Right now, today, going into this game.
You know what? I'm going to say Kansas City Chiefs. I understand the Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills, there's a lot of injuries to their starters on defense. They're kind of going to be weakened down by that. You know what? I'll say Kansas City. I think their strength is up the middle.
Then if you say Kansas City, then I would say they're playing in Kansas City. I would say the odds makers are seeing a problem with the 2-point spread. So I say it's going to come down to the defense. And if Kansas City has the momentum in the defense, that's who's going to win this game. So because it's so close on the odds and on the money line, I would give it to Kansas City. Now, about the spread, it could be a 1-point game. That's a tough one to call. And that's why bettors, this is where the casinos make the money right now. Casinos make the money on these narrow spreads. And most of the time, they don't cover the spread. So I would say I would take Kansas City both on the money line and on the spread.
And when it comes to this game, I have not been shy about what I think is going to happen here. I do have Kansas City win this game. I would take the -2 on this one. And understand that when it comes to Kansas City versus Buffalo, I think it could be a great game. Heck, I think it could be a field goal game. But when it comes to this matchup, there is a lot of people who are looking at this game and they look at what happened last time as their explanation for why they're going with Buffalo. I understand that there are people out there who are saying that because of what's happened in the past, that they are going to go with that instinct. But let me ask you this question. I'm going to ask all the people who are watching around the world right now. Did you not see what happened last year? I mean, in the regular season, the Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills, there was that back and forth matchup, and then the Buffalo Bills lost by 14 points in the playoffs last year. I mean, yes, the Buffalo Bills won by 18 points earlier this year, but who says that this isn't just going to be a repeat of what happened last year? Who says that the Kansas City Chiefs, who struggled just a bit in their matchup in 2020, came back and beat them in the postseason? I think this might happen again. So when it comes to Kansas City, when it comes to Buffalo, I have the Kansas City Chiefs -2. I have them winning this matchup, and I will not be surprised if it ends up being a 30-28 or maybe something like that, where Kansas City does win this game, but it's around the number of the spread. It's very similar to the Cincinnati Bengals and the Tennessee Titans game. To understand that game, I could have that being very close as well. I could see that game being a 30-21. I could see that being a matchup where you're going to see it really come down to the fourth quarter. I could see that be a reality in this game, but I have the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Buffalo Bills, and I'm just going to give a prediction off the top of my head, 30-28. I could see that being a reality out there in Kansas City. Before we move on to the next game, Vegas Mike, do you have any more comments about the Kansas City Chiefs Buffalo Bills game? Anything else you would like to add about this game before we move on to the NFC side of the bracket?
You really think Cincinnati is going to win, and you really think they're going to more than beat the spread? Is that what I just heard you say, 30-21?
Hey, I'm spitballing off the top of my head, but yeah, sure, 30-21. I think that could be a real reality of a scenario out there in Cincinnati. I think they could take away in the fourth quarter and beat the Tennessee Titans.
Hope you're not betting. Real greenbacks on this one, Rocco. You might get a big surprise. But anyway, let's go on to your next game. That's all I've got to say.
Anyone who knows me knows that I do not bet on games that I talk about here on the Sports Angle. I understand the last time that I betted on anything was with my friend Andre Robinson during the NBA playoffs last year, and I won myself a nice little $50 on that bet. So, hey, whenever I do bet, I normally end up winning in that column anyway. So let's go over to the next segment. Let's talk about this upcoming game on the NFC side. And let's talk and let's really discuss what's going to go on between the San Francisco 49ers and the Green Bay Packers. Yes, folks, I was 5 out of 6 in my NFC, in my NFL wildcard prediction. Yes, I was 5-1. Those dang Cowboys ended up making me lose and make me not go 6-6. But that's okay. The 49ers, I like them anyway. I kind of support them. I support the San Francisco 49ers. Now, when it comes to the 49ers-Packers game, this game actually probably has the biggest spread out of all of the matchups here. Understand that the 49ers are a 6-point underdog in this matchup. The Green Bay Packers are -250 according to the money line, and the Packers are a 6-point favorite. The over and under right now is 47.5. So, Vegas Mike, I'm going to pass this over to you. When it comes to the Packers and 49ers, having it a 6.5 spread, pretty much being a touchdown, a little under a touchdown. What do you think about this game, Vegas Mike, with it being a 6-point spread for the Green Bay Packers, the 49ers being a 6-point underdog? I mean, does that surprise you understanding what's happened the last couple of times Green Bay and San Francisco have faced off in the playoffs in the recent era?
Let's recap, Rocco. The money gave, I was thinking it was 3.5 in the Cincinnati game to the Titans. So the money thinks that it's going to go to the Titans because it's more than a field goal. You go into the Kansas City game. The money said it's 2-point spread. So they're going under a field goal difference. So the money doesn't know. But in this one, the money knows. They're saying San Francisco is there, just like you saw maybe the Arizona Cardinals there when they played the Rams. So they will be there. But Garoppolo looked very shaken up at the end of that last game. And they won by the skin on their heads, just like Cincinnati won over the Raiders by the skin on their heads. So I think that Garoppolo is going to choke, unfortunately, because that's what he did in the last game. And they won because of their defense. But I don't think their defense is going to beat Green Bay. And the money says the same thing. So the money says, go with Green Bay. So I'll stick with the money.
Well, Vegas Mike, here's two things I'm going to disagree with. First off, the 49ers didn't win by skin of their hairs. They won because of a bump of a referee. All right, that's the reason why the 49ers won that game. If Dak Prescott hadn't been an idiot and run in the middle of the field with only a couple seconds left, maybe the Cowboys would have had a shot at actually winning that game. But no, Dak Prescott, with little amount of time left, decided to do a quarterback run with no timeouts left and then hand it off to the center instead of knowing the rules and actually giving it to the referee. So that's why the 49ers won that game. It wasn't because of what happened there. It's because the Dallas Cowboys lost that game because of their absolute stupidity. That's the reason why the Cowboys lost.
You mean the same reason Cincinnati beat the Raiders because the referee blew a whistle that didn't count?
No, they won that. No,
Let's remember that,
no.
Rocco. Let's remember that whistles blow that don't count. So let's not go there.
And I'm going to go there because the actual Cowboys lost because of stupidity. The Bengals won because they picked off Derek Carr at the end of the game to secure the game.
Bengals won because a referee decided not to go with his whistle, but let's not go there.
When it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals Las Vegas Bear game, that is in the past, my friend. That's in the past. Now, when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers Green Bay Packers game, we're talking here on Sports Angle.
So you think Aaron Rodgers is going to hand the ball to his center instead of the referee? You think he's going to be shaken up like Garoppolo?
No, because he's actually a good quarterback.
So who are you picking in that game, Rocco?
Who am I picking in this game? I am picking the Green Bay Packers to win this game.
They're going to cover the spread.
But when it comes to this game, I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people think because of the history surrounding this game. I don't know if you know this, but Aaron Rodgers has actually lost every single playoff game he has gone against San Francisco. 2020, he lost by 17. In 2014, he lost by a field goal. And in 2013, he lost by 14 points. Understand that he has lost every single time he has had to take on the 49ers, his hometown team, by the way, in the playoffs. But I want you to understand something. I have this game being a 4-point game. I have the Packers winning this game 31-21. Okay? I have the Green Bay Packers winning this game 31-27 because there's going to be a late touchdown by Aaron Rodgers to get them into the NFC Championship game where they're actually going to lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but we'll talk about that later on. But yes, I actually would take the 49ers +6 because I have the Green Bay Packers winning by 4. I had the Green Bay Packers winning this game on a late touchdown by Aaron Rodgers. So does that answer your question, Vegas Mike? I have the Packers winning this game, but I would take the 49ers +6 because I see this being a very close game.
I think has the best defense.
Best defense right now, it'd be San Francisco 49ers based off of what they've done the last couple of weeks.
And who do you think has the best running game?
Best running game would be the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Dillon, A.J. Jones. I mean, understand that there's going to be a great running back 1-2 duo out there in Green Bay.
And do you know that this is supposed to be one of the top 5 coldest games ever played in playoff history.
Well, I also understand the last 4 coldest games in the NFL history, 3 of them also happened in Lambeau Field. So there's a little bit of a pattern there. And the reason why it's called the frozen tundra, because they always have the coldest games on.
Let's take your premise and let's assume it's correct right now that San Francisco has the best defense and that Green Bay has the better running game. And it's going to be cold can be, Rocco. So I have to give the credit in this one probably to the San Francisco defense. So is Aaron Rodgers going to be throwing a late touchdown? I doubt it. Somebody's going to be running for a late positioning to get a field goal. So I, with you, do not think anybody's going to cover the spread in this one. I doubt that because of how cold it's going to be. But I would say the running game is going to prevail. Whichever team can run the best is going to prevail. And if you believe it's Green Bay, I probably believe it's Green Bay. So I give them the game, but not covering the spread. So we're in agreement, but for different reasons.
Talking about the NFL divisional round here on the Sports Angle. I'm your host, Rocco Rachiele. We're here at Vegas Mike. And we have one last game to talk about with the NFL divisional odds, and that is the Los Angeles Rams going to Tampa, taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, once again, the odds brought to you by Caesars. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are minus 150 according to the money line. The spread is a field goal, and it is a 48.5 for the over and under. And understand the history between these two. I actually am really surprised that it is a field goal difference between the Buccaneers and the Rams. So before we give predictions, before we really start talking about it and really breaking it down, Vegas Mike, I want to ask you, when it comes to this game, the last time we saw these two teams face off, the Rams were in LA and they beat the Buccaneers by 10. Now, the last time we also saw the Rams and the Buccaneers face off, the Rams beat the Buccaneers in Tampa last year, 27-24. So I want to know from you, Vegas Mike, the Rams have won the last 2 matchups, but they haven't been in the playoffs. They have not been when the season has been on the line. So Vegas Mike, knowing Tom Brady, knowing the Buccaneers like we do, and knowing what they did to the poor Eagles last week, who do you have win this matchup and why? And more importantly, the spread being a field goal. Are you surprised by that? Are you shocked by that? What is your reaction to the Rams versus Buccaneers game this weekend?
Well, let me first start out by saying you said the poor Eagles, and I would say you were 100% correct. I could not believe they were there. In fact, it shows how bad the worst teams in the NFC are for the Eagles to actually have been there. They were bad, and they actually got there. So first of all, that doesn't say very much for Tampa Bay. Secondly, let me remind you, the odds makers are only right about 80% of the time. The money's only right about 80% of the time. First 3 games, we went with the money, not on the spread, but on the money line. So I'm going to say this is going to be the upset. And why do I think it's going to be the upset? Because I do not think that Gronkowski and Brady can win the whole game by themselves. They won the whole game by themselves. And I actually think the Rams are going to pull an upset here.
All right.
My pick. This is the 20% where the money's wrong. Let's see what happens.
All right. So before I really break it down on why you are wrong about this, let's just talk about this for a second. Did you know that the 7th seed, ever since they've been introduced into the NFL, have been 0-4 in the wild card game? Seriously, a 7th seed hasn't won a single game. Now, understand that you were talking about the poor Eagles. Well, the Eagles lost this year. The very bad and the very sad Steelers lost this year. The Colts lost last year to the Bills, and the Bears lost to the Saints last year. So the number 7 seed hasn't won a game ever since they've been brought in to the playoffs. In fact, they've been mainly blowouts ever since they've been introduced. So, hey, NFL, if you're watching, this idea of making 7th seed being a competitive idea has been an absolute joke in the NFL playoffs. But we know why you did it. It was to add more money, to add more revenue to the playoffs. We're not being naive here. We all know why you did it. Now, to get back to the conversation of the Buccaneers and the Rams, I'm actually very shocked that you picked the LA Rams in an upset to beat Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Don't you know the Buccaneers are going to go back-to-back this year? Don't you know that the Buccaneers, Tom Brady, is going to ride off to the sunset being a back-to-back champ in Tampa Bay. I mean, Vegas, Mike, come on. I mean, you're a longtime listener, a longtime supporter of the Sports Angle. You know very well they're going back-to-back. I said that back in September when I made the predictions here on this show. I mean, you already know that, right? I mean, why are you picking the Rams to beat the Buccaneers? I need to hear more.
Rocco, why are you staying with your pick of Cincinnati? That's why you're picking Cincinnati to upset the Titans, because you guys stay with your first of the season picks. If you hadn't picked Cincinnati and you'd pick the Titans, you know you'd be picking the Titans right now. So let's just remember that, Rocco. It's all about whatever it's all about. I believe there's going to be one upset. There's always one upset. The money only gets it right 80% of the time. I'm saying this is the upset because if you watch that game against the poor, lowly Philadelphia, whatever you want to call them, okay, they look pitiful, and it was Gronkowski and Brady, Brady and Gronkowski, Gronkowski and Brady, Brady and Gronkowski. They aren't going to be able to do that all the time. The Rams are much, much better than Philadelphia was. It's not even the same ball game. So let me then assure you that there's going to be one upset. You refused to go with the Titans and the Bengals. You had to go with that as your upset. I'm picking this as my upset. So you've got an upset. I've got an upset. We'll see which upset actually prevails.
All right, so that's what you're doing with your upset, and that's fine. That's great and dandy. And Vegas, Mike, when you do lose, and when the Rams do lose to the Buccaneers, my prediction, by the way, is 35-23. All right, I think this will be a 12-point game. I understand that I think the Buccaneers are going to win this game. It's going to be easy and over with because understand that Tom Brady is in the playoffs now. He's not going to lose to the Rams in the regular season like he did because those were regular season games. He could shrug them off. But this is the playoff. This is Tom Brady we're talking about. All right, this is one of the most competitive quarterbacks we've ever seen. One of the most driven players we have seen in the NFL era. So when it comes to Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'm picking their game 35-23. That's what my prediction is going to be for this ball game. And understand that when it comes to this matchup, I am picking the Buccaneers and the Packers in the NFC title game once again. And on the AFC side of the bracket, I am taking the Bengals and the Chiefs. Now, Vegas, Mike, before we move on to Super Bowl odds, I want to ask you, what is your bracket? What is your bracket for the AFC and the NFC? Just remind the audience, because we've pretty much been breaking it down here on the Sports Angle. Who do you got?
Who do I got? Well, Rocco, you know who I've got. I just told you. It was the Titans and the Chiefs against the Rams and the Packers.
You know what? I'm really and hey, Blaze is in the chat, and he said exactly what I'm going to tell you, Vegas Mike. You better watch Saturday. You better watch Saturday because when the Bengals beat the Titans, I'm going to be smiling from ear to ear at work because I'm actually not going to be able to watch this game because I'm going to be forced to be at work. But when it comes to Cincinnati and Tennessee, when that game wins, I am going to be happy to say that I told you so. I'm going to send you a text and say, ha ha, I told you so.
Okay, I'm looking forward to the text.
Now, moving on to Super Bowl odds here on the Sports Angle. We have about 15 minutes left here on the show. And I want to ask you, Vegas Mike, when it comes to the Super Bowl odds, is there anything that stands out to you? Is there any Super Bowl odds right now that really jumps off the page to you, Vegas Mike? Because I've seen the 8 teams. I've seen what the odds, what the money line, and what is the wagers being put on this game right now. But I want to know from you, Vegas Mike, before I say what all 8 of them are here on the Sports Angle. Vegas Mike, which one shocks you at the moment? What is the odd that you go, wait, why are they being placed here in terms of Super Bowl 56 odds? Any of them surprise you right now?
Yeah, the odd makers have got the Rams and the Buccaneers so close in making it and beating Kansas City. They've got them both very close, but they've got the Green Bay Packers significantly ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs. So the biggest surprise I have is that the Kansas City Chiefs are picked as such an underdog to the Green Bay Packers. If they were to meet, the odds have it plus 1,100 to the Green Bay Packers, meaning that they believe they're going to win. And you look at the straight odds again, it's 375 at MGM for the Packers, and it's 400 for the Chiefs. So they've got a little closer, but no matter where you look, they've got it going to Green Bay. So right now, with as hot as Kansas City is, I'm a little surprised at that, but it's early and the money hasn't had time to speak yet. So let's watch the money. So early on, that's my surprise, but I'm not really willing to call them right now because I don't even know who's going to be there, Rocco.
Well, it's actually interesting because the two odds-on favorites right now is the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So out of those two matchups, Vegas Mike, because you have the Buffalo Bills plus 550 and Tampa Bay Buccaneers plus 550, and then you have the Green Bay Packers plus 375 and the Kansas City Chiefs plus 500. So when it comes to these matchups, I want to ask you, which one would you be more interested in watching, Vegas Mike? Which one would you actually want to sit down, grab a big bucket of popcorn, and watch the Super Bowl between the Packers and the Chiefs, or the Bills and the Buccaneers? Josh Allen versus Tom Brady, or Aaron Rodgers versus Patrick Mahomes? Which one would interest you out of the ones that are the odds-on favorites right now, Vegas Mike?
What interests me the most would be the Las Vegas Raiders against the San Francisco 49ers. But against the Chicago Bears. That's the one I really want to see is the Raiders and the Bears, but they're not there and nobody's betting on them. So because the money's not falling on them, I can't take that bet. But I think an interesting one would probably be the Buffalo Bills, watching them play anybody. That would be the funnest one to watch. Now, the odds makers and neither one of us have got them there. But I'd love to see the Buffalo Bills play the Green Bay Packers. That would be a fun game. It would be cold. It would be miserable. They would both get what they deserve being out there freezing their butts off. So that would be my favorite, to see Buffalo and Green Bay.
Well, see, the funny thing is it played at a neutral stadium. So they wouldn't freeze their butts off because they'd be playing in sunny Inglewood, California. They'd be playing out there in LA. So
it's going to be cold.
So actually, it won't be cold because they're playing in sunny LA. Now, when it comes to
Rocco, no, I'm just being facetious there. No, I'd love to see those two play.
See, actually, funny enough, a matchup that I would actually like to see if it was any matchup out of them all, like, if I didn't have to stay with Tampa Bay versus Cincinnati, I would actually like to see Buffalo versus San Francisco. I would really like to see the offense of Buffalo and the defense of San Francisco. I think that would be a great matchup. And Buffalo being plus 550 and San Francisco being plus 1,000. I actually would love to see that matchup myself if I could see an offense and a defense go at each other, opposites attract. Now, when it comes to Super Bowl odds, one last question I want to ask. The San Francisco 49ers are the underdog on the NFC side. Cincinnati is the underdog on the AFC side. Would you be shocked? Scratch that. Would you be surprised if Cincinnati and or San Francisco went on to win the Super Bowl? Because understand that they are plus 1,000 and plus 1,200. They are the underdogs. They are the ones that the odds makers have at the bottom of the sheet. But just like the Atlanta Braves in MLB and just like the Milwaukee Bucks in the NBA, they were towards the bottom and towards the lower end of that bracket when they were towards the beginning of the season last year. And they went on and won the entire thing. So Vegas Mike, I want to ask you, would you be shocked and would you be surprised if San Francisco and or Cincinnati won the Super Bowl, considering how low they were on the odds sheet not even 2 months ago?
If they had momentum right now, I wouldn't be shocked. But San Francisco in that last game had no momentum. They about blew it. And I would be shocked if they were there. And I would be shocked if Cincinnati was there. They about lost it to the lowly Raiders defense, Rocco. I would be totally shocked because they do not have the momentum right now. Kansas City has the momentum, unfortunately, or fortunately, for those who follow Kansas City like Vegas Karen. And fortunately or unfortunately right now, Green Bay has the momentum. But I still think you're going to see the Rams and the Packers face off. And I think you're going to see the Titans and the Chiefs face off.
We have about 10 minutes left here on the Sports Angle. I'm your host, Rachiele. We're here with Vegas Mike. And we do have one last segment to get into. before we wrap up the show. And that is the interesting conversation about the potential leak of the new Washington football team's name. And that is the fact that it has been leaked to the public that they are going to be called the Washington Red Tails. I want to say that once again, see if maybe it catches on. The Washington Red Tails. Now, it has been reported that the reason why that name is going to be used is in honor of the Tuskegee Airmen out there, the ones that were during wartime, during World War II. Now, I want to ask Vegas Mike and all of my audience around the world before I give my angle on it. If that is the actual name, if the leak is accurate, it's not just a bunch of BS rumor crap, what do you think about them pretty much going from the Washington Redskins to the Washington Red Tails? Vegas Mike, very quickly, what do you think about it?
Let me first say I have tremendous appreciation and love for our military. And the Tuskegee Airmen were people of great integrity, great bravery, and they should be respected. Now, I don't know if you respect them by putting their name with a football team, but let me just say one thing, and it's a little tongue in cheek, but I think the Washington Leakers would be the best name for them because they're in Washington. Everything leaks out there, whatever it is. So I think they ought to go with the name, the Washington Leakers, just like the name leaked out. I think their name should be the Washington Leakers. But naming it after the Tuskegee Airmen would be a great compliment. And it'd probably be too good for the team. It honestly would, being in Washington, D.C. In fact, that name would actually disrespect the Tuskegee Airmen because they were loyal, genuine, and brave people. And being in Washington, D.C., those two names don't match up. So no, I don't like that name for them. I would like it for somebody else, but not for Washington.
Yeah, that's a really great take by Vegas Mike. Now, my angle on it is that when it comes to Washington, you said the Washington Leakers. I mean, they got sewage leaking from the actual stadium, and there's a lot of things going out there in Washington. I personally think that they should just call them the Washington Corporate. They should call them the Washington Generals. They should call themselves, a tie-in to the White House, tie-in to a bunch of politicians and how corrupt they all are. But when it comes to Washington, if they are going to do the Washington Red Tails, I understand the name behind it. I understand the reason behind it. And I can respect what the name represents. So if it is, once again, it's all rumors, it's all speculation. But if it is the Washington Red Tails moving forward, then I have respect for that, obviously, because of what it represents behind it. Now, we have about 7 minutes left here on the Sports Angle. And I want to ask one question to Vegas Mike before we do one of our most beloved segments here on the Sports Angle. I want to ask, when it comes to MLB, when it comes to the odds there, first off, do you think the lockout is going to end? It's nearly 2.5 months in, for crying out loud. But secondly, the Dodgers, the Astros, the Yankees, who are pretty much the Lakers and pretty much the Canadiens of baseball, I mean, they're always going to be the favorite. They're pretty much going to always be towards the top of the top. They are the freaking Yankees, for crying out loud. But when it comes to that, when it comes to those three, the Dodgers, the Astros, and the Yankees, they are the odds-on favorite right now to win the World Series. But I want to know from you, Vegas Mike, do you think a season is going to be played? Because like I said, 2.5 months in, and there still is a lockout in Major League Baseball. And if there was a MLB World Series based off the Dodgers, the Astros, and the Yankees being the odds-on favorite, does that surprise you that these three are up there? And the fact that the Atlanta Braves, the World Series champions, are not as high as they should be on the odd sheet. So Vegas Mike, what do you think about baseball? We have about 6 minutes left.
Rocco, we started off the show talking about money. We spent the entire show almost talking about follow the money. Now, let me ask you a question. Are you going to follow the money here? Why would it be any different? I would say follow the money, follow the money, follow the money. And you look here in the early money says it's the traditional teams. The White Sox have found their way into it after a couple of years. Maybe somebody should have had the Mets there. I don't know. The Mets are paying to be there. Will they be there? I don't know, but they sure are paying to be there. So the fact that they're not there probably should shock some money people.
The one team that I'm really surprised isn't there is a team that I actually think could go a long way. and that's the San Francisco Giants. I mean, if you really followed this offseason, the Giants are probably the smartest team in all of baseball. So really, really Vegas, Mike, the team that I have win the World Series, if I had to make any prediction once it kicks off, I really like the San Francisco Giants. I really think what they're going to be doing is great. Tampa Bay Rays, by the way, they are on the odd sheet, but I love what they did with Wander Franco as well, signing their future long term. So the Giants and the Rays are two teams that are being very disrespected right now in Major League Baseball. But yeah, I understand the Dodgers, the Astros, the Yankees, following the money. It makes a lot of sense to go with them. But the Giants and the Rays are two teams I say watch out for based off of their offseason moves. And once again, to ask the question, MLB lockout, do you think it's going to end? Do you think it will be over at some point?
Before I get into that, let me once again say, let me agree with you about San Francisco and say you also need to watch Seattle, the Mariners. So don't forget the Mariners. If there's two teams other than the Mets that could have probably should have maybe what should have been there, it should have been those two. The reason I started out with the odds and the money is because follow the money. Yes, they're going to play season. No, the players aren't going to go without $1 gazillion in paychecks. And no, the owners are not going to go without $1 gazillion in revenue. So yes, they're going to play the season. Will it be 162 games? I don't know. It could be 155, but they are going to play a season just like they did during 2020, just like they did during 2021. So the money says, yes, they're going to play the season. Do you have any doubts of that, Rocco?
I actually do. And the reason why I have doubts is because of how much greed and how much of their ego has gotten in the way. Understand that both sides are being incredibly greedy at this point. You have the MLB owners who are acting the way they are. You have the MLB Players Association who are acting the way they are. They're pretty much at a standstill at this point. Really, nothing's getting done in these meetings. The reports have come out and have said that there really hasn't been any big shift as opposed to what's happened 2.5 months ago when the lockout did start. So when it comes to Major League Baseball, I could actually see for the first time in a long time a shortened season in Major League Baseball, because I don't think this is going to be resolved by spring training. As a matter of fact, I will not be shocked, ladies and gentlemen. I'll not be shocked if once we get into the middle of February, if we're still in a lockout. I mean, who knows? Maybe by June, they'll get their heads out of there, you know what, and they'll actually play the game. But my prediction is by the middle of February, once all the spring training has come and gone, and these MLB players are still haven't been signed because you can't sign the big name free agents because there's a lockout, that is when it's going to happen. It's because by mid-February, the regular season will almost kick off, and those big names will still have to be signed at that point.
But Rocco, you're a bright young man, and you use the word greed. And as you get older, you're going to find out greed prevails. And these guys are not going to do away with all that money. They are greedy, and they want to say, well, we can't get bigger salary increases because the way the younger drafts are paid and for the number of years that their contracts last. Those are some of the major sticking points. But right now, they're using a lot of hyperbole, a lot of bluster. That's the way they negotiate. So I believe and firmly believe they're going to play at least 155, if not 162 games. Greed and money, money and greed. Now, you said we got 2 minutes here, Rocco. Now, do you want me to flip the switch on you, buddy?
We're going to do a segment called Flip the Script for the last 90 seconds here on the Sports Angle. I'm your guest, Rocco Rachiele. We have our host, Vegas Mike. Now, I'm going to have him ask one question, and I will answer it here on the show. So, Vegas Mike, you're the host for the last 90 seconds. What question do you have for Rocco Rachiele?
When did Tampa Bay become a premier sports town? It doesn't matter whether you look at the baseball odds, the football odds, the hockey odds, or even a couple of years ago, the basketball, other than basketball, but in those three premier leagues, when did Tampa Bay become a premier sports city for football, baseball, and hockey?
It's a great question. I'll give you the answer. It started at the beginning of the 2010s when they started pouring money into this city. Understand that in baseball, the Tampa Bay Rays, they used to be good, but then they started getting all this money and all these things were coming in, and this owner started paying more and more, And that is when they started doing better. In the NFL, Tampa Bay Buccaneers were in the bottom of the bottom. And then around 2015, 2016, they started paying. And that's when they started becoming good again. And in the Tampa Bay Lightning, they went and got this great general manager, a Hall of Famer, Steve Yzerman. I almost said Bill Clinton there, Steve Yzerman. Steve Yzerman was a Hall of Famer. They brought him as a general manager, made John Cooper one of the best talented minds in hockey, their head coach. And then they started winning and started getting better thanks to their talented Amelia Arena out there in Tampa Bay. So really the early 2010s, when they started spending money, that's when Tampa Bay started getting better. The 2010s is really when Tampa went from being a mid-level city to being one of the best in sports. Now, we have about 30 seconds left here on the Sports Angle. Vegas Mike, I want to thank you for being my guest for this show. It's always good having you on. And, I just want you to say some last words, final remarks.
I want to do a disclaimer here. Say, don't listen to anything I said about who's going to win, and don't hold me accountable, because I don't want to be known as the guy that made you lose money. So I disclaim any picks I made. That's how you have some fun with that, Rocco.
Okay, you know what? The real reason you're doing that is because you don't want some boys from Chicago to show up and break your kneecaps. That's really the reason why.
It's the boys from Las Vegas I don't want to break my kneecaps. I'm not worried about Chicago anymore. They can't win anything and they can't do anything. So Chicago's not my worry. It's Las Vegas, Rocco.
And this is the Sports Angle. We're always happy to have Vegas Mike on the show. I'm your host, Rocco Rachiele. We are live weekdays, Monday to Friday. And until next time, rock on, and we will see you later.